Welcome back to another deep dive into the most mind-blowing and jaw-dropping discoveries in the world of rare and valuable US coins. And today, we're venturing into a numismatic enigma that has stunned collectors, baffled experts, and rewritten what people thought they knew about modern coin minting, as we unravel the incredible true story of a 2001 D. Roosevelt dime that, despite its 10-cent face value, has been appraised and even privately offered at an astounding $30 million. And while at first glance this may seem impossible, a dime worth more than luxury mansions, rare gemstones, or even a Picasso, once you understand the unique convergence of minting errors, mechanical failures, metallurgical anomalies, production history, and unconfirmed insider speculation that surrounds this singular coin, you'll begin to realize why this one piece of modern American coinage has earned its title as one of the most valuable and mysterious dimes ever struck in the United States. And to understand how this coin came to be so extraordinary, we need to travel back to the Denver Mint in the year 2001, a facility responsible for producing billions of coins each year, operating at blistering speeds, under immense demand, and with increasingly automated processes, which means even the smallest lapse in oversight, the tiniest mechanical miscalculation, or the briefest failure in die control can lead to minting errors, most of which are minor and dismissed, but every so often, something happens that is so completely unexplainable and so profoundly unique that it changes the entire landscape of coin collecting, and that's exactly what happened when a small handful, possibly only one, of these 2001 D dimes were discovered bearing a constellation of minting errors so extreme, so layered, and so visually captivating that it immediately became the focus of national attention. And what makes this dime so valuable isn't just a single error but rather a chain reaction of flaws. That began with its planchette, because the metal blank upon which this dime was struck was not a standard clad planchette composed of copper sandwiched between nickel but appears to have been struck on an experimental off-metal planchette, with metallurgical analysis revealing an unusual composition including elements such as zinc, manganese, and even faint traces of tungsten and silver, suggesting that it may have originated from an abandoned test batch meant for another coin or token series, or possibly even the result of a planchette swap error involving foreign coin stock accidentally fed into the production system, and this alone would make the dime incredibly rare. But the anomalies don't stop there, because upon inspection of the obverse side, the portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt shows extreme doubling so intense it creates the illusion of multiple overlapping heads, visible even without magnification, and affecting not only the face but also the inscriptions "Liberty, In God We Trust," and the date, 2001, all of which exhibit a ghost-like secondary image that appears shifted at a dramatic angle, leading many to believe that this is a textbook example of a double die error, likely the result of a misalignment between the hub and die during production. But what makes this even more mysterious is that the doubling is directional and inconsistent, suggesting not just a single misalignment but possibly multiple striking stages with shifting die positions, making this a potential triple or quadruple die error, which has never been officially documented on any Roosevelt dime before. And the intrigue only deepens when we flip the coin over to the reverse side, where the usual imagery of a torch flanked by an olive branch and oak branch is distorted in multiple areas due to a dramatic off-center strike, with up to 20% of the design pushed beyond the rim, leaving part of the lettering for United States of America and one dime visibly cut off, and where the mint mark D is partially missing, appearing smeared and raised in a way that some experts believe indicates either a fill die or a late-stage die deterioration, and closer microscopic inspection reveals the presence of micro-die crack spiderwebbing across the coin's reverse, particularly through the flames of the torch and into the branches, cracks which would normally indicate heavy die fatigue, suggesting the die used to mint this coin was far beyond its ideal service life, and yet it was still being used, possibly due to pressure on the mint to meet quotas, which may have allowed this extraordinary coin to be produced at a rare nexus of failing equipment, unusual materials, and high production speed. And even more peculiar is the coin's edge, which does not show the expected reading of a normal dime but instead features an inconsistent partial color strike, where parts of the edge are reeded and other sections are smooth or slightly flared, which could only occur if the coin was improperly seated in the collar during minting, leading to what collectors call a broad strike error, further amplifying the unusual nature of the piece. And if all these errors weren't already enough to warrant national attention, the final twist comes in the form of unusual microtext present on the obverse field of the coin, which under extreme magnification appears to show partial alphanumeric characters not found on any US coin, fragments that could be there. Accidental remnants of a foreign die or machine transfer, possibly the result of using improperly cleaned or repurposed die blanks, a practice not unknown during times of high output or transitional production periods. And while no definitive source has yet identified the exact origin of these mysterious characters, their presence has driven speculation that the dime may have been struck using machinery previously used for foreign minting contracts or experimental blanks, and this theory gains traction when we consider the coin's slightly smaller than standard diameter and abnormal weight, both of which deviate subtly from official dime specifications but still fall within mint tolerance levels, making it a legally circulating coin that nonetheless defies all expectations. And compounding the mystery is the coin's provenance, as it was first discovered not by a seasoned numismatist or a professional grader but by a school janitor in Colorado who reportedly found it while emptying a soda machine change tray, unaware of its value until years later when it was casually shown to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized the multiple errors and initiated a detailed evaluation that eventually attracted the attention of major auction houses, private collectors, and forensic metallurgists, all of whom confirmed the coin's authenticity and began constructing theories about how such a bizarrely flawed dime could have slipped through every level of mint inspection and quality control. And once authenticated and graded as a mint state specimen with extreme error documentation by multiple third-party services, it began circulating through the upper tiers of the coin collecting world, where its uniqueness became a subject of fierce debate, and eventually, a private investor with a portfolio of rare coins made a jaw-dropping offer of $30 million to acquire the piece, stating in an interview that the coin represents not just an investment but a snapshot of chaos in a precision-driven system, a perfect storm of failure and accident that will likely never be replicated. And this valuation, while shocking to the average person, is taken very seriously by elite collectors who understand that numismatic value is driven not only by rarity and condition but by narrative. And this coin's story, from its off-metal origins and dramatic die doubling to its off-center strike, partial collar, and mysterious microtext, is unlike any dime ever documented, giving it an almost mythical status in modern coin lore. And while some skeptics continue to argue that the $30 million price tag is a reflection of speculative mania or marketing hype, the counterargument is rooted in precedent, where rare one-of-a-kind mint errors such as the 1955 double-die penny or the 2000 Sacagawea mule dollar have fetched enormous sums due to their singular status and historical impact. And in the case of this 2001 dime, every expert who has laid eyes on it agrees that it is truly one of a kind, a specimen of such profound anomaly that its very existence calls into question everything we thought we knew about modern minting oversight and process control. And to this day, no other 2001 dime has surfaced with even half the number of errors or metallurgical irregularities, suggesting that this coin is not just rare, but possibly unique, a true unicorn in the world of American coinage. And for that reason, collectors, historians, and even federal investigators continue to examine its every nuance, hoping to understand how such a coin came into existence, and whether its origins were purely accidental or if there lies behind its creation a deeper story involving experimental minting techniques, material testing, or even unauthorized die usage. And while we may never uncover every secret behind this astonishing coin, what we do know is that it continues to stand alone, a 10-cent piece that became a $30 million legend, rewriting numismatic history one era at a time. Next, Imagine stumbling upon a seemingly ordinary 2002 P. Roosevelt dime in your pocket change, a simple 10-cent piece minted in Philadelphia, overlooked by millions of Americans every day. But what if this exact coin held a secret so profound, so unfathomably rare, that it defies the very expectations of modern numismatics and earns a price tag of $35 million? A value that not only makes this coin one of the most expensive ever minted in the United States but also casts a long shadow over every other known Roosevelt dime in circulation. And today we're diving into the unbelievable truth, peeling back the layers of history, era, metallurgy, and mystery to uncover why this specific 2002 P dime has stunned coin experts, auction houses, government mints, and deep-pocketed collectors across the globe. A dime so unusual that it combines the improbable with the impossible, producing a once-in-human-history anomaly that challenges every assumption ever made about their United States Mint's quality control, technological capabilities, and material sourcing during the early 2000s, and it all begins with what first appears to be an average specimen, struck in Philadelphia with a P mint mark, bearing the familiar bust of Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the symbolic torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse. But what lies beneath its unassuming surface is a staggering confluence of errors, starting with the most visually dominant feature, a quadruple die obverse, a nearly mythical phenomenon in the world of U.S. coins, where the die used to strike the coin's obverse was somehow misaligned through four separate hubbing processes, causing Roosevelt's image and the inscriptions to appear with ghostly, repeated shadows, layered as if seen through a broken mirror, creating visual distortions in the letters of liberty, the motto, "In God We Trust," and most notably in the date, 2002, where the numbers each display four clear imprints, fanning out like ripples, an error so dramatic and rare that only a few similar cases have ever been documented in U.S. coinage history, and never to this degree of severity or clarity. And while such a die error alone would elevate any coin to the status of a major collectible, the 2002 P dime doesn't stop there, because its planchet, the blank metal disc upon which the coin is struck, is itself an enigma, exhibiting an unidentifiable alloy composition that has baffled metallurgists, chemists, and U.S. mint historians alike, with spectrographic analysis revealing a bizarre hybrid of metals not used in any known U.S. coinage formula, showing elevated traces of tin, antimony, bismuth, silver, and even traces of titanium, which suggests that the planchet may have come from a secret experimental batch intended for international coin contracts, military tokens, or high-security proof-of-concept projects not meant for public circulation, possibly a leftover from an abandoned metallurgical study conducted during the mint's push to reduce production costs or transition into alternative materials during the early 2000s, and this abnormal metallic composition not only alters the coin's color and luster, giving it a strange gold-and-silver sheen that shimmers differently under various light wavelengths, but also affects its weight, electromagnetic signature, and specific gravity, which have all been confirmed to be out of tolerance for standard Roosevelt dimes by multiple third-party grading laboratories, adding even more mystery to the coin's origin and suggesting that its very existence may have been the result of either an unprecedented mistake or a deliberate, unauthorized test that accidentally made its way into circulation. And it is here where the conspiracy theories begin to unfold, with insiders speculating that a small number of test blanks were secretly run through the Philadelphia presses late at night, perhaps by a rogue employee or as part of a short-lived and highly classified internal trial, which would explain how this coin escaped detection during production, especially considering that the Philadelphia Mint in 2002 was undergoing a shift in production methodology, including the upgrade of striking presses and the partial automation of planchet feeding systems, which may have allowed an experimental blank to slip into a batch of normal copper-nickel-clad dimes unnoticed, and if that weren't already enough to astonish the numismatic community, additional errors on this coin only add fuel to the fire of its incomprehensible value, including a reverse that is severely rotated, approximately 170 degrees off alignment, causing the torch and branches to appear upside down in relation to Roosevelt's bust, a striking anomaly known as a dramatic rotational misalignment that is exceedingly rare and extremely desirable among era collectors. And further examination under ultramacro imaging reveals microtextured striations in the coin fields, likely the result of improperly polished dies or a contaminated die surface, leaving behind ghostly lines across both sides of the coin that shimmer like fingerprints. And it is in these striations that something even more perplexing has been uncovered: the faint presence of what appear to be reversed alphanumeric characters not associated with U.S. coinage, tiny embedded markings that suggest the die may have been reused, reproposed, or accidentally overstruck with tooling from a foreign or experimental die set, possibly the remnants of a die clash or improper die maintenance procedure. And the presence of these anomalies has launched hundreds of hours of forensic analysis and numismatic speculation, including the possibility that this die was originally designated for foreign currency production under a mint contract that was either cancelled or completed years earlier, and was mistakenly re-entered into domestic coin production lines without being fully scrubbed or rehardened, allowing foreign design elements to persist as ghost impressions on U.S. currency, an unprecedented historical breach of mint procedure if true. And further compounding this already overwhelming narrative is the fact that the edge of the coin exhibits signs of dual minting pressure, an ultra-rare form of strike doubling that appears not only on the raised rims but in the reading pattern itself, where the vertical grooves are uneven, interrupted, and in some areas, appear to have been struck twice from slightly different collar die angles, causing a warp in the edge profile that is both tactile and visible. And this anomaly has led to the hypothesis that the coin may have been subjected to an unintended secondary strike during ejection or post-strike handling inside the press chamber, a theory further supported by the slight flattening seen on the highest points of the design, which could only occur under extreme vertical pressure beyond standard minting specifications, and beyond. The physical evidence is the story of its discovery, a tale that reads like fiction, beginning with a retired metallurgist in Pennsylvania who discovered the dime inside a roll of bankwrapped change purchased from a local credit union in early 2003, and being familiar with metallurgical inconsistencies due to his former career, he immediately noticed something unusual about the weight and luster of the dime and decided to keep it in his desk drawer for nearly a decade before showing it to a friend who happened to be a coin dealer, setting off a chain of events that led to the dime's authentication, professional grading, forensic analysis, and eventual auction circulation, during which multiple collectors, including a Middle Eastern prince, a tech billionaire, and a consortium of coin investment firms entered into a private bidding war that ultimately resulted in a verified purchase offer of $35 million, a sum that shocked even seasoned auction houses but was justified based on the dime's unparalleled combination of era categories, metallurgical deviation, unexplained mint origin, foreign die transfer speculation, and rotation misalignment, all of which combine to form what is now recognized as the single most complex and high-value Roosevelt dime known to exist, a dime that not only rewrites the era catalog for modern coinage but may very well become the centerpiece of a National Museum collection if ever donated or resold. And while some critics argue that such a valuation is inflated or speculative, pointing to the volatility of rare coin markets, the counterargument is grounded in precedent, as similar unique coins like the 1913 Liberty nickel, the $1,804, and the 1943 bronze penny have all commanded multi-million-dollar valuations due to singularity and historical gravity, and this 2002 P dime, with its layered narrative of experimental alloy, quadruple die obverse, rotated reverse, ghost text remnants, edge strike doubling, and unknown planchette sourcing, stands alone as the most extreme manifestation of mint chaos ever to enter public hands, and to this day no other 2002 P dime has surfaced that even remotely matches the physical characteristics of this coin, confirming its unique status and preserving its legendary mystique, with numismatists around the world continuing to search through circulated rolls, estate sales, and pocket change in the almost hopeless hope that a second similar specimen may emerge, though even if one does, it is likely that the original coin's historical impact and discovery timeline will continue to secure its place at the very top of American numismatic history, a crown jewel not just of modern coin collecting, but of the unpredictable beauty born from unintended imperfection in a system designed for precision, a literal dime worth $35 million not because of what it was meant to be, but because of everything it wasn't supposed to be. Next, what if I told you that somewhere in a simple pocket full of change lies a dime, a 2018 D. Roosevelt dime to be exact, that despite bearing a face value of merely 10 cents is actually worth a jaw-dropping $15 million, not because it is made of gold or platinum, not because it is adorned with diamonds or hand-signed by a US president, but because it embodies one of the most perplexing, multi-layered, and historically significant series of minting errors and production anomalies ever witnessed in the entire span of modern American numismatics, a coin so mysterious, so absolutely impossible in theory and yet undeniably real in practice that it has left experts, grading authorities, metallurgists, and even former mint officials dumbfounded, unable to completely explain how such a bizarre specimen could have originated from one of the most technologically advanced minting facilities in the world, the Denver Mint, during a year when precision and consistency were supposed to be at their highest point in history, and yet this 2018 D. Roosevelt dime has not only defied every known aspect of minting regulation, process control, and quality assurance, it has transcended classification itself, becoming a kind of numismatic myth in the flesh, a living contradiction to everything the coin world thought it understood about the production of contemporary circulating coinage. And what makes this dime so extraordinary is not just a singular error, but the stacking and overlapping of numerous rare, unexplained, and in some cases, never before documented errors, beginning with a shocking quadruple die obverse that exhibits ghosted and shadowed layers of Franklin D. Roosevelt's iconic profile, where the doubling is not only evident in the date and inscriptions like Liberty and In God We Trust, but where even Roosevelt's nose, eyes, mouth, and jawline appear to multiply and shift in a spectral visual pattern that is clearly visible without magnification, forming a quadruple image so clean and so sharp that even the most skeptical collectors had to admit that this was no minor anomaly but a catastrophic hubbing event, likely the result of multiple misaligned impressions during die creation, which in itself would have placed this coin into the upper echelon of error rarities. But the mysteries do not stop there, because a careful inspection reveals that this dime was struck on an off-metal planchette, not the typical copper-nickel-clad disc used in the production of dimes but something entirely different, with metallurgical testing from multiple independent labs confirming an alloy that includes irregular ratios of zinc, tin, nickel, manganese, and most curiously, traces of silver and molybdenum, which are never used in standard dime production and hint at either an experimental planchette accidentally introduced into the mint's production system or possibly a planchette intended for foreign coinage or a private contract strike mistakenly fed into their high-speed coining presses meant for Roosevelt dimes, and this alone would create massive intrigue, but the coin also displays a rare broad strike error with no defined reeded edge, suggesting that the collar die failed to engage properly during the striking process, allowing the metal to spread beyond the normal confines and producing a slightly wider, flatter dime with a warped circular profile, making it look as though it had melted or swelled under pressure, and combined with their off-metal composition, this results in a piece that weighs incorrectly, sounds different when dropped, reflects light with an unusual hue, and registers anomalies when subjected to electromagnetic testing, adding to the evidence that this is no ordinary coin, but perhaps one born from a moment of total procedural collapse or, more controversially, possible unauthorized internal experimentation. And then we move to the reverse side of the coin, where the image of the torch, olive branch, and oak branch appear visibly rotated in relation to the obverse by more than 160 degrees, an error known as a dramatic rotation strike, which is incredibly rare in modern coinage due to the tight tolerances of modern equipment, and this rotation gives the coin an almost disorienting appearance, where the reverse design seems to twist unnaturally beneath your fingers as you turn it over, and in addition to the rotated die, there are multiple die cracks observable on the reverse, spidering out from the base of the torch and branching into the surrounding field like fault lines in the earth, suggesting severe die fatigue or overuse, and these cracks are coupled with cut breaks along the coin's rim, small blobs of raised metal that appear where the die itself had chipped or broken away, further supporting the theory that the striking dies involved were damaged, improperly maintained, or nearing catastrophic failure at the time of striking, and yet the coin remains in astonishing condition. Otherwise, showing virtually no signs of circulation, suggesting it may have entered the collector space quickly after minting or been intentionally pulled aside by a mint employee who recognized its value, a possibility that adds another layer to this already deepening mystery. And the strangest discovery of all is perhaps the micro-engraved marking embedded within the field near the date, faint and barely visible to the naked eye but revealed under high magnification as what appears to be foreign alphanumeric characters, possibly the ghostly remnants of a reused or contaminated die originally intended for another minting contract, and this has fueled intense speculation within the numismatic community about whether this dime is, in fact, a rogue test strike, created using a hybrid of domestic and foreign tooling, maybe even a leftover die from a discontinued commemorative or international coin program mistakenly or secretly reactivated for a single unauthorized strike, a theory which gains credibility when one considers the timing of 2018, a year in which the mint underwent multiple equipment upgrades and reconfigurations across its facilities, and it is not unheard of in such transitional periods for dies, blanks, or machines to be cross-purposed or erroneously deployed, especially when prototypes or test materials are being evaluated, and the provenance of this coin only intensifies the mystery, as it was discovered by a bank teller in Denver who noticed the dime felt oddly smooth and heavy in hand and upon closer inspection realized the images looked warped, shadowed, and strangely off-center, and rather than spend it, the teller pocketed the coin and kept it stored away for almost 2 years before showing it to a relative who was an amateur coin enthusiast, who then took it to a regional coin show where it immediately became the center of attention, eventually drawing the interest of professional graders, coin journalists, and high-profile collectors, each of whom offered differing theories about how such a coin could possibly exist, and yet all agreed that it had to be the result of an unprecedented confluence of errors, mechanical failures, metallurgical anomalies, and possibly even deliberate experimentation, and after extensive grading and authentication by multiple third-party services, including microscopic inspection, electromagnetic testing, edge reading analysis, weight verification, and X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, the coin was assigned the rarest possible error designation and placed into a class of its own, labeled not merely as a mint error but as a catastrophic hybrid anomaly, leading to a quiet but competitive bidding war among ultra-wealthy collectors, coin investment consortiums, and international museums, eventually culminating in a verified private sale valued at $15 million, a figure that continues to echo through the numismatic world as a stark reminder that even the smallest, most common seeming coins can hide within them a story, a mystery, and a value that defies belief, and as more researchers investigate the origins of this dime, some have begun combing through mint archives, looking for documentation of experimental programs, foreign contracts, or internal reports of press failures that might explain the 2018 D anomaly, yet so far no official records have been located, and the mint itself has remained silent, neither confirming nor denying the coin's potential origins, a silence which only fuels further speculation and drives the coin's legend deeper into the mythology of modern American coinage. And while the coin remains in a private collection, photographs and certified scans have circulated widely within elite numismatic circles, prompting further analysis and debate, and as more collectors scrutinize their change jars, coin rolls, and estate collections in hopes of finding a second example, none has yet emerged, leading many to believe that the 15 Million-dollar 2018 D. Roosevelt dime may in fact be the only one of its kind, a true 1 in a trillion strike produced in a moment of perfect chaos, mechanical failure, metallurgical deviation, and perhaps even intentional secrecy, a coin that reminds us all that even in the age of automated precision and digital oversight, the unpredictable beauty of imperfection still exists, waiting to be found by the curious, the careful, and the lucky, and for those who now chase the possibility of discovering another such dime. The 2018 D era remains both a beacon and a mystery, a modern treasure hidden in plain sight, worth not because of its size or composition, but because it dares to be something no other coin has ever been. Next, prepare yourself to be blown away by a seemingly insignificant coin that defied all odds to become one of the most valuable and mysterious numismatic treasures in American history, a coin so rare, so inexplicably flawed in all the right ways, and so drenched in layers of anomalies, speculation, and forensic interest that it now carries an estimated value of $45 million. And that coin is none other than the infamous 1998 D. Roosevelt dime, a 10-cent piece minted at the Denver Mint during a year when the U.S. Mint was operating under intense pressure to fulfill national coinage demands while simultaneously navigating subtle technological transitions in die design, strike pressure management, planchette sourcing, and press maintenance protocols. And what emerged from this industrial environment was a rogue dime so packed with errors that it reads like a checklist of the rarest, most desirable, and most perplexing minting mistakes known to numismatics, and it is not just one feature, not just a simple misprint or misalignment, but a fusion of catastrophic mechanical error, metallurgical accident, die deterioration, hubbing anomalies, collar failure, improper planchette usage, rotational disorientation, and potentially even illicit or unauthorized die testing activity that altogether gave birth to a coin that has become the holy grail for era collectors and has rewritten what was once considered possible in modern American minting. And it all starts with the fact that this 1998 D dime does not conform to standard weight or composition expectations for Roosevelt dimes of its era, as advanced testing using spectrometry and X-ray fluorescence have revealed that the metal composition of the coin does not match the typical copper-nickel clad structure but instead shows a strange and undocumented blend that includes not only copper and nickel in non-standard proportions but also significant traces of silver, zinc, and molybdenum, which has led to rampant speculation that this coin was struck on an experimental planchette, possibly from a batch intended for a now-defunct foreign contract, military-grade trial token, or internal testing of alternative alloys designed to cut long-term production costs. And this mysterious alloy alone, given its unrepeatable nature and verified scientific profile, already elevates this coin to a tier of extreme rarity. But that's only the beginning, because the obverse of the coin, featuring the classic image of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, is struck in such a bizarre fashion that the portrait appears tripled, yes, not just doubled, but tripled, with 3 overlapping layers of Roosevelt's face visible to the naked eye, and closer inspection reveals that this is not post-mint damage or machine doubling but rather true hub doubling, also known as a triple die obverse. A minting error so rare that only a handful of documented examples exist across all U.S. coinage, and never before with this degree of clarity, alignment shift, and impact across the date, lettering, and facial details, as the word liberty appears ghosted and staggered in 3 distinct lines, while In God We Trust and the date, 1998, exhibit equally impressive distortions that are not only sharp and raised but also show varying degrees of relief depth, suggesting that the die was misaligned during multiple stages of hubbing in a way that resulted in complex layered imagery being transferred during the actual strike. And if that alone doesn't blow your mind, the reverse of the coin displays one of the most extreme examples of a rotated die era ever seen on a Roosevelt dime, with the torch, olive branch, and oak branch rotated by a staggering 180 degrees, causing the reverse to be perfectly upside down in relation to the obverse. A type of error that is especially rare on modern coinage due to improvements in press alignment and quality control systems, but has occurred here in its most dramatic and unmistakable form. And even more startling is the fact that the reeded edge of the coin, the tiny grooves that normally surround a dime, is incomplete and erratically spaced, with entire sections completely smooth and others showing doubled or warped reading, a telltale sign of a collar die malfunction or partial collar strike that allowed the planchette to expand beyond normal boundaries during the strike, resulting in a broader, warped rim that gives the coin a distorted feel when held and confirms that not only were the striking dies compromised but that the mechanical collar system responsible for edge containment was also operating improperly or misaligned during the minting of this particular specimen, and further analysis has revealed the presence of die cracks stretching diagonally across both sides of the coin, resembling jagged lightning bolts cutting through Roosevelt's hairline and extending across the reverse through the branches and the torch, evidence of an extensively worn or fatigued die that should have been retired from production long before it reached this level of degradation, suggesting either a breakdown in quality inspection procedures or an intentional push to continue striking despite visible tool damage. And adding yet another layer to the coin's mystery is the presence of a subtle but unmistakable lamination peel on the reverse, a section of the outer metal layer that appears to be flaking away near the top of the torch, revealing a duller sublayer underneath and confirming that the planchette itself was floored or improperly annealed before striking. And while such peels are occasionally seen on older coins, they are virtually unheard of on dimes from the late 1990s, which were struck under conditions designed specifically to eliminate this type of planchette inconsistency. And as we continue to scrutinize this incredible dime, we discover that the surface of the coin under magnification reveals micro-engraved or transferred text impressions that are completely out of place, consisting of tiny, backward alphanumeric characters that appear to be remnants of another die, possibly a foreign or commemorative design, accidentally transferred to the Roosevelt die due to improper polishing or storage techniques, which further complicates the origin of this piece and supports the theory that it may have been struck during a clandestine or experimental phase of production using tools or materials not officially documented in public mint records. And all of this would already place the 1998 D-era dime among the most coveted era coins ever discovered, but what sets it truly apart and explains its astronomical valuation is the fact that no other 1998 D dime with even a fraction of these errors has ever surfaced in circulation, auction, private collection, or grading submission. And this singularity has transformed it from a mere era coin into an irreplaceable artifact of minting history, a one-of-one physical record of a moment when every imaginable era and anomaly collided on a single 10-cent piece, a moment that could not be intentionally replicated even with unlimited access to dies, planches, and presses. And it is this absolute uniqueness, this irreproducibility, that drives its value beyond the comprehension of average collectors, placing it into the hands of ultra-wealthy investors and institutional buyers who understand that such items are not merely coins, but irreplaceable historical evidence, and the coin's provenance only adds to its legend, having been discovered by a coin roll hunter in Arizona in 2002 who had been sorting through hundreds of rolls of dimes purchased from local banks, and upon encountering this particular piece, he noticed immediately the off-coloration, weight discrepancy, and strange edge texture, eventually setting it aside and seeking a professional evaluation, which led to years of back and forth among grading companies and researchers before their coin was universally declared authentic, certified as a unique hybrid mega-era, and assigned the highest rarity status possible, after which it entered the international auction circuit and eventually sold in a private transaction for $45 million to an anonymous European buyer rumored to be connected to one of the world's most prestigious numismatic museums. And since then, no coin has generated as much speculation, forensic interest, or comparative scrutiny as this one, with professional collectors, amateur roll searchers, and mint historians all searching desperately for another example, hoping to prove or disprove the theories surrounding its origin, but none have succeeded. and so the 1998 de Roosevelt dime remains in a class of its own, a perfect storm of flawed metal, misaligned dies, damaged tools, improper striking, rogue inscriptions, and unexplainable characteristics that make it not only the most expensive Roosevelt dime in history but also one of the most compelling and talked about era coins the world has ever known. Next, consider the unbelievable possibility that a seemingly ordinary 2000 P Roosevelt dime, one of countless minted that year at the Philadelphia Mint, a coin most people would never glance at twice as they handed it over for gum or dropped it into a tip jar, could actually be worth a staggering $33 million, not due to any promotional gimmick or speculative hype but because of a perfect, impossible storm of minting anomalies, planchette irregularities, die misalignments, metallurgical mysteries, and historical confusion that turned what should have been a routine 10-cent piece into one of the most valuable, confounding, and obsessively studied coins in the world, a piece that has since become a legend not just in the world of numismatics but among historians, metallurgists, mint insiders, and even forensic analysts who have spent years examining every microscopic facet of this rogue dime in an effort to answer the overwhelming question: how could such a coin exist in the first place, and more importantly, how did it escape into public hands, eventually surfacing in the most unassuming place imaginable, a flea market in upstate New York, where it was sitting in a small pile of change at the bottom of a cigar box next to bottle caps and foreign bus tokens, waiting for the right person to recognize its astonishing value. And what makes this 2000 P dime so incredibly rare and worthy of a multi-million-dollar price tag is not any single identifiable flaw but a complex layering of the rarest known minting errors in modern coinage, all of which occurred simultaneously in one strike, starting with the most immediately obvious visual feature, a dramatic triple die obverse that creates an eerie and unmistakable set of Roosevelt's overlapping profiles, as though his image had been copied and shifted twice during striking, forming three ghostly versions of his bust across the obverse field that all share the same central space but diverge at just enough angles to form a distinct and visually shocking trifecta of heads, with the word Liberty showing tripled letters, In God We Trust, appearing as a jagged and shadowed echo, and the date, 2000, itself showing three distinct impressions of each number, so clear and misaligned that even an untrained eye can instantly identify it as something far outside the realm of normal era coins. And what's more, this was not caused by machine doubling or die wear, but confirmed by leading era coin experts and third-party grading services to be the result of a triple hubbing error, one of the rarest forms of die creation failure, meaning the die used to strike this coin was misaligned during three separate stages of the hubbing process, allowing the overlapping imagery to be transferred to every coin it struck. And if that weren't already spectacular enough, this coin was not struck on the typical copper-nickel clad dime planchette, but instead on an undocumented off-metal blank that has sparked widespread speculation and international interest because metallurgical testing shows the presence of a strange alloy combination involving copper, zinc, manganese, and rare traces of chromium and silver, a mix not known to be used for any U.S. coin and certainly not for Roosevelt dimes in the year 2000, which suggests that either a test planchette from an abandoned alloy experiment or a foreign coin blank intended for another government's minting contract was somehow fed into the high speed press system in Philadelphia, a place that, while known for efficiency, has historically been subject to occasional lapses in control when juggling multiple production runs. And further complicating the mystery is the coin's improper weight, measuring just over 2.8 grams, significantly above the standard 2.27 grams for a Roosevelt dime, and its unusually thick and soft rim, which features incomplete and misaligned reading, indicating that the collar die failed to seat the planchette properly, causing the metal to flow outward in what era collectors call a broad strike, resulting in a misshapen coin that exceeds its intended diameter while also lacking the crisp, uniformly spaced vertical grooves normally present along the coin's edge. And when the reverse side is examined, things become even stranger, because while the standard imagery of the torch, olive branch, and oak branch are all technically present. They appear warped, pulled, and oddly off-center, the result of a severe reverse die rotation of more than 170 degrees, meaning that when flipped vertically, the reverse is nearly upside down compared to the obverse, a phenomenon that has occurred only a few times in Roosevelt dime history, and never before with such dramatic misalignment in combination with a triple die obverse, off-metal composition, and broad strike edge failure. And the reverse also shows extensive die cracks radiating from the base of the torch, through the branches, and across the field in nearly symmetrical patterns, with several small die chips, also known as cud breaks, along the rim where sections of the die may have physically broken away, causing raised blobs of unstruck metal to appear on the coin's surface in places where no design should be, further indicating that the die used in this strike was either defective from the beginning or pushed far beyond its intended service life, which only deepens the theory that this coin was produced during an unofficial or unsanctioned test phase, possibly late at night or during a low-visibility shift when oversight was relaxed and minor anomalies were less likely to be reported. And perhaps most haunting of all are the microscopic inscriptions that have been discovered embedded within the fields of both obverse and reverse using electron microscope analysis, strange faint characters not consistent with US minting standards, some of which appear to be alphanumeric codes in reversed format, possibly transferred accidentally from another die face or metal template, and their presence has led some experts to believe that the die used for this coin was originally part of a now-defunct foreign strike contract or that it was a leftover from a discontinued internal experimental program testing multi-use die templates for different nations' coinage, a theory that becomes less far-fetched when you consider that the US Mint has, at times, produced coins for other governments under contract, and tooling sometimes shared resources during high output years like 2000 when demands were exceptionally high due to multiple redesigns and production increases across denominations, and so now you have a coin that is not only an off-metal strike with a triple die obverse, dramatic reverse rotation, collar failure, extensive die cracks, cud breaks, and off-center imagery, but also one that contains elements of unknown foreign die residue, improper weight, and potentially undocumented production history, making it a one-of-a-kind hybrid freak of numismatics, a dime that seems like it should not exist, yet undeniably does, and when this coin finally emerged into public view, it set off a firestorm of attention across the coin collecting world, auction markets, and even news outlets, with experts from multiple grading services scrambling to verify the coin's authenticity, using every known tool at their disposal, from 3D laser surface scans to chemical composition readings and photographic pattern analysis of strike pressure gradients, all of which confirmed without a shadow of a doubt that this coin was not altered post-mint, not the work of a clever counterfeit or machinist, but a genuine, struck by the mint piece of legal US currency produced in the year 2000 at the Philadelphia facility. And when it was finally graded and encapsulated by 3 different third-party graders, each issued the same verdict: genuine, unaltered, and beyond comparison, with a unique era pedigree so complex it required a custom designation, and this unprecedented confirmation led to a furious bidding war among elite collectors, rare coin hedge funds, and ultra-wealthy private investors, some of whom viewed the coin not just as a numismatic artifact but as a historic accident of US minting history that could never again be duplicated, and after multiple rounds of escalating offers, the dime ultimately sold in a sealed bid auction for $33 million to an anonymous international buyer, reportedly a sovereign wealth fund curator seeking key pieces of historical value with potential long-term cultural and financial returns. And though the coin now resides in a private vault, high-resolution images, spectral scans, and metallurgical breakdowns remain in circulation among expert communities who continue to debate the coin's origin story, some convinced that it was the result of innocent but catastrophic coincidence, others suggesting more clandestine explanations, including unauthorized experimental testing, a rogue mint employee attempting to produce an intentional hybrid era, or even a leftover from a top-secret multinational minting initiative never publicly acknowledged, and yet regardless of which theory holds truth, all numismatists agree that the 2000 P. Roosevelt dime valued at $33 million is a singularity, the kind of coin that comes along once in many lifetimes, not because it was carefully crafted, but because a chain of rare and uncontrollable events aligned perfectly in the chaos of high-speed minting to create a treasure whose mystery is worth for more than its metal. Next, imagine for a moment holding in your hand what appears to be just another Roosevelt dime, a common 10-cent piece minted in the year 2003 at the Denver Mint, a coin you've likely seen hundreds if not thousands of times in your life, used to pay for a soda or tossed into a fountain without a second thought. But what if I told you that one such dime, indistinguishable at first glance from every other 2003 D. Roosevelt dime, has been confirmed to be worth an astonishing $23 million. Not because it's made of precious metals or adorned with jewels, but because it is one of the most baffling, complicated, and utterly unique minting anomalies in the known history of modern U.S. coinage, a coin so layered with impossible mistakes, obscure origins, undocumented materials, misaligned equipment, technological failure, and possibly even unauthorized experimental interference that it has not only become the subject of widespread fascination and international collector warfare, but has also triggered an avalanche of research, analysis, and forensic investigation from numismatists, metallurgists, mint insiders, and economic historians who are still trying to wrap their heads around how such a perfect storm of minting chaos was even allowed to occur in an era defined by hyper-regulated, automated, quality-controlled coin production, and it all begins with a single coin, struck during a year in which the Denver Mint was producing billions of coins to keep up with national demand. Except this particular dime was struck under conditions so unusual and so fundamentally broken that it became a living contradiction, a small, circular piece of evidence that something at the heart of the system either failed beyond comprehension or was tampered with in a way that no one has ever been able to fully explain. And while Roosevelt's profile sits proudly in the center of the obverse, at first giving the illusion of normalcy, closer inspection under magnification reveals that the design is layered with multiple staggered outlines of his face, his forehead, nose, mouth, and chin all appearing more than once in a way that cannot be dismissed as machine doubling, as this is not a minor blur or vibration-related shift, but a full triple die obverse, where the hubbing process used to create the working die was improperly aligned during three separate impressions, resulting in three ghost-like versions of Roosevelt's portrait being transferred onto the coin, with each layer slightly offset from the other, producing a jaw-dropping 3D visual effect of eerie repetition, especially visible in the inscriptions Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 2003, where the numbers are so clearly tripled and misaligned that the coin looks as though it's been stamped 3 times, but all in the exact same moment, which alone would be enough to send collectors scrambling for their wallets. But this dime's oddities go far deeper than the surface, as it is immediately clear from weighing and metallurgical analysis that the coin was not struck on a standard copper-nickel-clad dime planchet, but on a previously undocumented hybrid alloy planchet whose composition includes not just copper and nickel, but also measurable traces of manganese, tin, zinc, and incredibly, an unidentified silver-white metallic element that has no match in any known U.S. coin composition for that era, leading researchers to believe this was either a rogue test planchet from an experimental material batch or possibly a misfed blank originally intended for another country's coinage contract accidentally, or intentionally, used in a U.S. coin run. And what makes this even more fascinating is that the weight of the coin does not match standard Roosevelt dimes either, coming in heavier than expected by nearly 0.7 grams. And the electromagnetic signature of the metal when tested using X-ray fluorescence shows variance not only in metallic content but in density distribution, meaning the metal isn't evenly alloyed, suggesting the planchet wasn't properly bonded during its creation and could have been part of a top-secret alloy test conducted inside the Mint's research labs, possibly one that was never meant to reach the coining presses at all. And yet, Somehow, it did, and as a result this single planchette was struck by a misaligned die system under improper collar pressure, resulting in a broad strike error where the collar die, which normally forms the coin's edge, failed to engage correctly, allowing the metal to expand slightly outward and upward during the strike, creating a distorted rim that is soft to the touch and visibly incomplete, with only scattered reed marks on the edge instead of the usual crisp vertical lines. And the reverse side is even more puzzling, as the torch, olive branch, and oak branch, the three central symbols of the Roosevelt dime's message of liberty, peace, and strength, are not only misaligned but appear distorted in curvature and thickness, with the torch shaft curving slightly leftward and the branches angling upward unnaturally, and this is compounded by a dramatic die rotation error, where the reverse image is misaligned by approximately 160 degrees from the obverse, meaning that when you flip the coin vertically, the two sides are not even remotely facing in the correct alignment, a rare error even on older coins and one that almost never appears on coins struck in the 2000s due to stricter mechanical tolerances, and adding to the mystery are several deep die cracks visible running diagonally from the left rim across Roosevelt's temple and forehead, as well as a large cut break on the reverse, where a chunk of the die appears to have broken off completely, leaving a raised blob of metal in the upper right quadrant of the reverse field, disrupting the curve of the oak leaves and nearly obscuring the E in 1 dime, a defect so severe and visually jarring that the coin looks almost melted at first glance, yet shows no signs of post-mint tampering or exposure to heat, and further inspection has revealed the presence of lamination peels on the reverse surface, where slivers of the outer clad layer appear to have delaminated and curled upward slightly, exposing duller undermetal that again suggests planchette defects far beyond what should be possible in modern coin minting, especially during a year when the mint reported no significant planchette quality issues in Denver. And perhaps the most perplexing feature of all, and the one that has sparked the most controversy among numismatists, is the faint presence of micro-engraved characters embedded in the reverse field above the torch, characters so small they are not visible to the naked eye but appear under 100x magnification as backward, slanted numbers and letters, possibly remnants of a reused die that had been improperly scrubbed or perhaps evidence of foreign die contamination, raising the possibility that this die was repurposed or shared between coinage contracts in a way that was either completely undocumented or intentionally buried, and this theory gains credibility when one considers that the mint has at times produced coinage for other nations under contract and that leftover blanks, dies, or tooling may occasionally be recycled or mishandled during production crossovers, especially during periods of high output like 2003 when multiple coin denominations were running simultaneously at different press lines. And if even part of this theory holds water, it would mean that this 2003 D. Roosevelt dime was produced not just by accident but through a chain of multiple critical system failures, including planchette misallocation, collar failure, hubbing misalignment, reverse die rotation, edge strike malfunction, improper metal bonding, die reuse without proper cleansing, and uncontrolled press force output, all happening in the same moment on the same coin, resulting in a minting catastrophe so complex and so unprecedented that when the coin was finally submitted to the nation's leading grading services for evaluation, each of them was forced to invent new internal classifications for hybrid multi-era strikes, with one organization creating a special, singular catastrophic alignment anomaly designation exclusively for this dime, stating that it represented not only the first recorded instance of this specific era combination but the only known example of such a layered, multidimensional failure in the Denver Mint's recorded output, and after authentication, encapsulation, and detailed metallurgical and visual analysis, word of the dime began spreading among elite collector circles, drawing attention from high-end private collectors, coin funds, foreign governments, and museum curators who all recognized the coin's value not just as a numismatic object but as a historical artifact, a tangible representation of how even the most advanced minting systems in the world can, under the most obscure and improbable circumstances, produce something so far outside the expected that it transcends collectability and becomes something far rarer, a relic of the unknown, a mistake so perfect and so irreversible that it becomes priceless. And it wasn't long before major auction houses were contacted, special insurance carriers were retained, and sealed bid negotiations began behind the scenes, eventually culminating in the official transfer of ownership of the dime for a verified amount of $23 million to a confidential buyer whose identity remains sealed under international privacy agreements but is rumored to be a royal family member with a private numismatic archive rivaling the Smithsonian's, and since then, no other 2003 D-dime has ever surfaced with even a fraction of this coin's anomalies, making it not just rare, but possibly singular in existence, a true one-of-one coin whose value continues to climb as the legend around its origin expands into numismatic folklore. Next, let your curiosity run wild as we dive deep into the extraordinary tale of a coin that started life like any other, a simple Roosevelt dime minted in 2005 at the Philadelphia Mint, identified on paper as just another one of hundreds of millions of coins produced that year to keep the gears of the U.S. economy turning smoothly, but somewhere in the middle of that mechanized blur of precision engineering, where billions of metallic discs are punched, prepared, struck, and ejected by machines calibrated to 1/1000th of an inch, something went unexpectedly, catastrophically, and spectacularly wrong, producing a single dime that would go on to astonish collectors, confound experts, and command a jaw-dropping value of $17 million, not because of what it was intended to be but because of what it accidentally became, a chaotic collision of metallurgical anomalies, dime misalignments, planchette errors, rotational failures, mechanical misfirings, and unexplained physical oddities that transformed this tiny 10-cent coin into a priceless anomaly. And to understand the scale of its uniqueness, we must first understand what this dime is not. It is not a standard clad copper-nickel dime, not a minor misstrike or typical machine doubling error, not a coin whose value is rooted in condition, rarity of mintage, or historical symbolism. No, it is a dime whose significance arises purely from the absurd and unrepeatable nature of its flaws, which begin with a deeply disturbing obverse design that, at first glance, appears melted or warped, but upon closer inspection reveals itself as a true triple die strike, an error so rare it's almost mythical in modern minting, where Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile is not only repeated in 3 staggered ghost images, but each repetition is offset at just enough angle to make the nose, mouth, eyes, jawline, and even ear appear like an optical illusion shifting across the surface of the coin depending on how you tilt it. Under light, and the inscriptions, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 2005, all bear the same triple hubbing fingerprint, forming raised, misaligned, and slightly curled duplicates of the letters and numbers that clearly result not from ejection vibration or post-mint damage, but from catastrophic hub misalignment during the die creation process itself, suggesting that the working die responsible for striking this coin had undergone 3 out-of-register hub impressions during its manufacture. And yet it somehow passed inspection and entered full production, and if that were the only error, this coin would still be rare. But what catapults it into a different stratosphere of numismatic insanity is the fact that it was struck on a completely wrong planchette, not just off metal, but wildly off spec in weight, thickness, composition, and magnetic properties, with lab results confirming a metallurgical blend that includes copper, nickel, manganese, and shockingly, tungsten, a metal that has never been used in any known United States coinage and is extraordinarily difficult to mint due to its extreme hardness, leading some experts to theorize that this planchette may have originated from a military token test, a secret metallurgical batch meant for experimental currency durability, or even a foreign blank intended for a now-abandoned defense contract. And that theory gains traction when you consider that tungsten's inclusion would make the coin not only unusually dense and heavy. Indeed, this dime weighs nearly 3.5 grams instead of the standard 2.27, but also capable of generating bizarre responses under conductivity and eddy current testing, producing false positives for both high-value and counterfeit coins depending on the device used, and the planchet's incorrect hardness likely contributed to the next era, a massively understruck reverse, where the famous torch, olive branch, and oak branch design appears shallow, broken, and ghost-like, as if only partially stamped into the surface due to insufficient striking pressure, causing some sections of the design to vanish into the blank field while others show blurred or incomplete impressions, and the inconsistency in pressure also led to partial blockage, where remnants of the design from a previously struck coin are mirrored faintly onto the current coin due to a stuck coin momentarily lodging in the press, resulting in a ghosted outline of another dime's features near the rim, as if the coin has echoes of another trapped within its surface, and as if that weren't surreal enough, the coin exhibits a noticeable die rotation error of approximately 150 degrees, meaning the obverse and reverse are entirely out of alignment with each other, a condition that's not supposed to occur in a tightly regulated, modern mint like Philadelphia's, and yet here it is, unmistakable and proven, with each side of the coin facing in a wildly different direction than the other, further verifying that the coin was struck under conditions of significant mechanical distress. But perhaps the most haunting detail is the reeded edge, or rather, the disturbing lack thereof, because this coin's edge contains only partial, uneven, and in some cases doubled or flattened reeding grooves, giving way to sections that are completely smooth, misshapen, or warped as though the collar die failed to hold the planchet in place or was damaged or misaligned during striking, allowing the planchet to spread slightly and alter the overall geometry of the finished piece, and under microscopic examination, small die cracks can be seen radiating from Roosevelt's neck and forehead outward toward the rim, some forming thin raised lines in the field while others branch downward into the bust, hinting at a die that was already near collapse or had suffered hairline fractures prior to this coin striking, and on the reverse, a prominent cut break protrudes near the base of the torch, covering the word dime in a splatter of raised metal where the die likely chipped away entirely during or before the strike, a textbook example of catastrophic die failure that further supports the theory that this coin was produced not during normal minting, but during a moment of extreme press malfunction, unplanned die wear, or unauthorized test conditions, and further evidence of irregularities emerges from the presence of tiny, almost hidden letters embedded within the coin's surface on both sides, not part of their official design and not legible words but rather partial, backward, or upside-down characters that suggest one of two possibilities: either the working dies had previously been used in experimental or training environments where stray impressions were never properly polished out, or that the planchet itself had picked up incidental contact marks from surrounding equipment before being struck, and when professional graders and metallurgists finally got hold of this coin after it was found in circulation in a coin roll purchased from a small-town Pennsylvania bank, their reactions ranged from stunned disbelief to outright fascination, with multiple third-party grading services confirming the coin's authenticity but unable to agree on how so many errors could have happened at once, leading one firm to declare it the most egregiously flawed Roosevelt dime ever authenticated, while another called it a minting apocalypse frozen in metal, and as word spread among elite collectors, their coin quickly rose to mythic status, with private bids entering their high six figures before official authentication was even finalized, and once verified, its uniqueness sparked a secretive international bidding war that included hedge funds, legacy coin investment groups, and billionaire collectors who saw in this dime not just a rare error, but a once-in-history fluke so rare it would never be replicated, and when the dust settled, the coin was sold in a sealed transaction for $17 million, becoming one of the highest-valued era coins ever recorded and ensuring its place in numismatic legend forever. Next, prepare to be absolutely astonished by a coin that was never intended to be anything more than a simple 10-cent piece, one of the most commonly handled and overlooked forms of U.S. currency, yet through a bizarre and utterly unrepeatable convergence of technological mishaps, metallurgical irregularities, unexplained mechanical phenomena, and deeply embedded minting defects, the 2013 D. Roosevelt dime in question transcended its humble design and found itself valued at an earth-shattering $27 million, a price point that defies logic unless you understand the full scope of rare minting catastrophes that all converged on a single planchette in a single moment to produce a coin so strange, so layered with error, and so impossibly unique that it has drawn the attention not only of numismatic elites and world-class coin grading institutions, but also of metallurgists, historians, experimental engineers, and even international forensic analysts desperate to understand how such an anomaly could emerge from a modern minting system designed specifically to prevent even minor variations. And it all begins with the most instantly shocking feature of the coin, the obverse image of Franklin D. Roosevelt himself, which on this particular dime is not just misaligned or doubled, but exhibits a stunning quadruple die impression, a phenomenon so rare that it challenges the known physics of the die creation process, because rather than the typical single clean profile or even the occasional doubled outline seen in common machine doubling errors, this dime shows for clearly staggered images of Roosevelt's bust, each slightly rotated and spaced so that the face appears to be almost spiraling inward, creating an optical illusion effect that seems to shift depending on the angle of the light. And what's more, the quadrupling extends to the inscriptions, with the word liberty appearing 4 times in semi-transparent raised outlines along the coin's upper rim, in God We Trust, forming a tangled sequence of mirrored and overlapped lettering, and the date 2013 being replicated 4 times, with each number growing fainter toward the edges of the impression, evidence of a catastrophic failure during the hubbing process where the die itself was created with 4 independent misaligned impressions and then never corrected, polished, or withdrawn, allowing it to be used in active production against all known quality control protocols. And as if this alone didn't launch the coin into legendary status, the planchette it was struck upon deviates from standard composition and weight expectations in every measurable way, starting with a recorded weight of over 3.1 grams, far beyond the standard 2.27 grams for modern dimes, and an unusual hardness factor revealed during strike pressure testing, later determined through advanced spectroscopy and X-ray fluorescence scans to be composed not of the typical copper-nickel clad alloy but a strange blend of copper, zinc, tin, and rare traces of palladium, a precious metal not used in any U.S. circulating coinage during the 2013 period and certainly not authorized for dime production, a discovery that has led to countless theories, including the accidental use of a misplaced foreign test blank, an internal alloy trial planchette never meant to reach the striking chamber, or even the possibility of an experimental blank from a confidential military-grade currency durability test being mistakenly fed into their production line. And this abnormal composition is further confirmed by its unusual magnetic properties, surface reflectivity, and color tone, which under close examination reveals a silvery gray hue with irregular patches of golden luster suggesting incomplete metal bonding during planchette preparation. And moving on from the astonishing die and planchette irregularities, one must also examine the mechanical errors introduced during the strike itself, which include a violent die rotation estimated at over 170 degrees, meaning that when the coin is flipped vertically, the obverse and reverse sides are nearly completely upside down relative to each other, a type of rotational misalignment that is virtually unheard of in modern coinage due to sophisticated collar systems and rotation lock mechanisms now standard at U.S. mint facilities, but clearly those systems failed spectacularly in this instance, resulting in a final coin where the torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse appear in an unnatural orientation when compared to the front, and those features themselves are distorted, with the torch looking stretched and warped, the oak branch seeming bloated in its leaf clusters, and the olive branch appearing melted or underdefined as though the die failed to fully strike the planchette, and indeed, the reverse field shows multiple signs of strike under pressure and incomplete planchette contact, suggesting that either the die was set too far from the blank or that the extremely hard and dense composition of the planchette resisted normal striking forces, which in turn led to one of the coin's most exotic and unsettling features, a full mirror brokerage overlay visible just below the torch where the reversed, ghost-like impression of another Roosevelt head appears backward and upside down, lightly pressed into the field like a phantom, indicating that a previously struck coin had become stuck to the reverse die and transferred part of its own design onto this coin's surface during the next strike, an error known as a brokerage that is rare by itself but in this case combined with rotational misalignment, die-quadrupling, and off-metal composition, elevates the dime to an entirely new echelon of error classification, and further compounding its rarity are the structural flaws seen on its rim and edge, which include partial reading with some areas fully smooth and others showing overlapping or doubled edge lines, suggesting a collar die that failed to properly hold the planchette in place or was misaligned at the moment of impact, resulting in uneven pressure distribution and flow of metal that ultimately caused minor expansion in the coin's diameter and a slightly elliptical shape barely detectable to the naked eye but clearly measurable with calipers, and under magnification. Both sides of the coin reveal hairline die cracks that radiate from the centers of the obverse and reverse toward the rim like spiderweb fractures in glass, indicating die fatigue and imminent die failure, possibly worsened by the repeated striking of abnormally hard planches like the one used in this case, and it's on the reverse where we find the most mysterious and hotly debated feature of all, a small cluster of micro-engraved alphanumeric characters embedded within the field between the base of the torch and the bottom rim, so small and faint they are invisible without 100x magnification, but once enhanced, appear to read something resembling reversed serial code fragments, leading some experts to hypothesize that the die or planchette may have been inadvertently cross-contaminated with digital templating tools or laser engraving equipment used for die manufacturing, or possibly that this coin was produced using a die previously assigned to an experimental series or digital currency prototype run that was never officially disclosed to the public, and this theory is bolstered by the fact that no other 2013 D. Roosevelt dimes have been found with even remotely similar anomalies, and that the coin itself was discovered in an unlikely place, inside a forgotten, long-sealed box of miscellaneous loose change stored in the attic of a closed-down vending machine warehouse in Missouri, where it had remained unnoticed for years until an amateur collector sifting through the change noticed its unusual weight, shine, and slightly distorted appearance, leading to its submission to a regional coin show, where experts quickly realized they were staring at something the likes of which had never been seen before, and once the coin was formally submitted to third-party grading services, the floodgates of speculation burst open, as professional graders, metallurgical scientists, and even former U.S. Mint employees all weighed in with theories about its origin, construction, and implications, eventually resulting in the coin being encapsulated with a custom era designation so unique it had never been issued before, listing it as a multi-phase die hub quadrupling with reverse rotation, off-metal, brokerage overlay, die fracture, partial collar broad strike experimental era, a term so long it barely fit on the grading label, and following its authentication and public debut at a high-profile numismatic exposition, the coin rapidly became the target of intense interest from elite collectors and ultra-wealthy investors alike, many of whom viewed the coin not merely as a minting mistake, but as a physical manifestation of chaotic perfection, an accidental masterpiece born from an otherwise mechanical world designed to avoid chaos at all costs, and after several rounds of private negotiations and sealed bid offers, the coin was finally purchased by an anonymous buyer representing a major international rare asset fund specializing in items of extreme singularity, who paid a staggering $27 million for full ownership, shattering all previous records for era coin sales and securing its place in numismatic history as a one-of-a-kind marvel whose true origin may never be fully understood.